Welcome to Gabbin with Gavin.
Gavin Clark is one of the co-owners of Vintage 905 and joins us. Hello, Gavin.
Gavin and Clark has been selling vintage clothing in downtown Whitby for over 3 years.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is episode 10, double digits of Gabbin with Gavin. Super excited today. Honestly, if you guys know anything about me, you know I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. We got a very special guest on the podcast today. I'm joined by hardcore Channing Decker. How are you doing, man?
I'm well. I'm Gabbin with Gavin. I'm happy to be here, man. Thank you. And to you as well. You know, kudos on all your hard work. And I see it paying off every day. You know, it's great.
Oh, man. That means a lot, dude. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to this talk. This should be a lot of fun.
I don't normally even like to do these a lot of the time because I find the questions can be so monotonous and mundane. But when it comes to Gavin with Gavin, I have my expectations set up here for the quality of conversation we're about to embark on.
Oh, well, thank you, dude. I really appreciate that. Super kind words coming from you. I know I do want to start with kind of basic question because anybody tuning in might not be familiar with you. You are a professional wrestler, professional wrestling promoter, actor. Got a really big resume going on. The thing
I got a small modeling career going on that's slowly gaining steam, unknowingly to me, but I like to say yes to opportunities and I like to meet them with my full heart, if you will, you know?
Hell yeah. No, that's awesome, dude. I love hearing that. And I feel like our female demographics going up after this episode.
We'll just see the likes pumping in, you know?
the Decker rub. So the thing I wanted to ask you right off the top, man, is pro wrestling, everybody knows is dangerous. You hear all the stories and stuff. You are a deathmatch wrestler.
That's it.
What possesses you to do that, man? Like taking fluorescent bulbs and thumbtacks and
that's a question I think that I've spent a lot of my life answering too, what makes me tick. But the word that comes to mind when you ask about why and death match fighting and things like that is expression. You know, a lot of it comes down to how I would like to express myself in the wrestling ring and with the wrestling medium. So for me, it was a bit of a natural progression. I started to build a name here with the hardcore wrestling. And the difference for our listeners is really the types of weapons that are used between a hardcore match. You're going to get less glass. You're going to get less brick or stone. You're going to get less barbed wire sometimes. Blood tends to be a bit of both, but level up in the deathmatch fighting world. And it came in the form of an opportunity to go to Japan and have a little stint there with BJW, to stay there in Japan for a month and work and train and everything with them. And, it was a no-brainer for me. It was, I look at it like it was an opportunity to wrestle the best in the world because the best deathmatch fighters in the world, whether they be Takeda, Miyamoto, Jun Kasai, whoever it is, these guys are thoroughbreds. They are all of that and the deathmatch more. It was an invaluable learning experience for me.
Well, that's awesome. Just some of the words you said there. There's less glass. There's less brick. Like, what a wild thing, man. Let's back up.
It's my crazy life.
It's amazing, man. It's such a unique thing. Like there's such a small fraction of people in the world who can say that they wrestle to begin with, and then to take that and maybe an even more niche with it. There's so few deathmatch wrestlers in the world. And
I really feel that there's an opportunity for that to come over, into the North American television scene in a major way. Some of the wrestlers that I already mentioned, and there's probably another half dozen, including myself and a few others, whether they be Drew Parker over there or some of the great American guys that like Mance Warner, guys like that, who, Matthew Justice, who are really bringing it at a high level. And maybe, I liken it to, WCW and the cruiserweights, the way that kind of separated them, gave them that international flavor. Maybe there's a lane there that they can be used on North American television programs that hasn't been tapped into yet.
Very interesting. That's a great comparison with the cruiserweights because it is something that, that's going to immediately stand out to somebody on a card or anybody just coming by and watching, like not knowing.
People will be too afraid to continue to show it, kind of thing. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep, of course. Well, that's something I wanted to ask you about. That's got to be something that is on your mind, right? Like things are getting kind of more and more PG with some of the more mainstream wrestling and that. There's less hardcore and less death match, obviously. Like, what is it that makes you, draws you towards that still?
The desire to be myself in an uncompromised way. You talk about a lot of what is happening, this and that. I would hate to think that my artistic creativity or even my life would be dictated on what, the masses or what, some, if that was moving in a lane that I really was into, then yeah, I might continue to do that. But just because it's going there, it's kind of against my whole philosophy. I don't chase, you know what I mean? I do me. I find ways to be unique. I find ways that doing me means that I am one of a kind. So, the word lane keeps coming up. It's my lane here. I'm proud to be the guy that I am. And I really do feel representing a lot more. I always want to try to elevate, what's the saying is that the rising tide raises all ships. You know what I mean? I'm trying to elevate the whole scene, whatever I can do to, bring respect, to bring cool factor, to bring eyes to independent wrestling here, and more specifically on me, hardcore Channing Decker.
Hell yeah, man. I think your star is rising, man. And I know it, obviously this pandemic and stuff has been tough for everybody. But I know you had crazy momentum going. Everything was going great with did the Big Japan.
I sure did.
Greektown was going good. So hopefully when everything's back open, dude, we'll see you keep rising and keep ascending. And
well, hell yeah. And I think part of the reason why, I've been proud even at this time in the pandemic is that, I don't like to interpret anything more than a setback or something just to work around. You know what I mean? It's in a time when, especially in Canada, there really is no work right now for wrestlers, and I found different lanes to, really challenge myself to, get into acting a little more, to get into modeling a little more, to look for work where I can. And I think those are the tools that when you talk about what it takes to make it in any field, period, resilience certainly comes up really high on that list. So for me, it's another opportunity to prove myself to myself. And, I'm in a better place personally. I'm in a better place professionally. As far as I'm concerned, I've leveled up my game in every which way. And it's been, for all the suffering and what's gone on with this nonsense, I've tried to take it as a blessing as best I can to, work on myself.
Of course. That's so good to hear, dude. I love the positivity. I mean, you're in an industry that is, you've got to be able to roll with what happens with injuries and like cards changing and stuff like that. So it's cool to see how you've been really making opportunity for yourself during this time and just kicking ass, dude.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll take this opportunity to say, you can't always tell the future, but I something that really stuck with me is that you can certainly tell the habits that you're building. And, for me, I've taken this opportunity to build my day-to-day habits really tightly. You know what I mean? And it's been no surprise to me that it, kind of spirals into control in that way. It just sort of builds and grows exponentially. And, that gives me hope that, the habits that I'm building right now are the ones that are going to take me over the hump and into all of the goals and dreams that I've had for myself in this career.
That's great, dude. That's so good to hear, man. I love hearing that you're doing well during this. I want to kind of back up a bit. I want to talk about Big Japan. I want to talk about Greektown, Dark Side of the Ring. You got so much going on, but I kind of want to go back because I don't know a ton about your early days in that. You came up with your brother, which is super cool.
Yep.
Can I take a guess how your wrestling career started?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm going to guess it's very similar to mine, but we didn't have a similar career paths where a lot of wrestling with your brother in the basement, a lot of power bombs onto the cushions.
Power bombs onto the cushions in our parents' living room. However, it was a living room that was our wrestling dojo. It was a lot of injuries in that living room. Let me tell you.
Oh man, that's so cool. I feel like in my research, I found we're right around the same age. So it's cool thinking like we were watching the same sort of wrestling. And like, when did you guys kind of catch the bug? What was it for you? Do you remember any specific time?
Yeah, I do. I would have been about, in terms of folk bug catching, I would have been around 9 years old. It was something that had been on television that I had seen, this and that, but something about that time frame, I don't know what it was. It was peak WCW, to be honest. It was peak file sharing. So a lot of the cool shit was available to be found, whether it was clips of RVD, clips of Brock Lesnar, or, we are just old enough where I would buy and sell VHS copies of ECW shows too. So, kind of caught the tail end of the tape trading world, which is, a big part of wrestling fandom history. And it's certainly built from there. Absolutely.
It's really cool to think that you kind of got to see the tape trading era. And then, I've seen the full internet era. It's crazy how wrestling's evolved, eh?
And somehow it's found a way to be at the forefront of tech. Maybe it's because of the accessibility. It's almost like the path of least resistance. Wherever there is accessibility to spread content, that's where wrestling goes. Heck, to this day, when I go to sit down and really just kind of moss, that's all the stuff that I'm going back to, 96, 97, 98, those, whatever the promotion was, those are really kind of the years I associate with myself and a few more in terms of my childhood,
Who were some of your favorites growing up? Like who you mentioned in WCW during that era?
Yeah. I think the big one would have been the working class hero DDP, and he was the man for the people in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? I felt DDP was a big name for me as a kid, but I also really liked a lot of the jacked up, muscly guys. When I was 8 years old, I thought Scott Steiner was the coolest looking guy in the world. So, whether it be Scott or Buff Bagwell or whoever it was, you know what I mean? I definitely, I love those guys. And RVD's already come up. I remember RVD really young being like, my eyes like popping out of my head when I thought, oh, that's possible. Like just to see that stuff was exciting for me as a boy,
Absolutely. I can 100% relate to that. RVD was the guy growing up, man. Like we have a picture, me and my brother actually went to WrestleMania 18 when it was in Toronto. And
as did my brother and I.
Oh, no way, man! This is a similar.
Wait till you hear what the signs we brought, but I'd like to hear the ones you brought.
We had a RVD and a Jeff Hardy.
Oh, you chose better.
Oh no!
I'll tell you.
Please.
I brought, this is no joke, a Chris Benoit sign that said Benoit is a true Canadian hero. And I was rocking that thing like no tomorrow. I was so proud of that sign.
Oh man, that one did not age well.
No, poor aging.
Oh man, so that's awesome. What other events did you guys get to? A lot of events as kids, or
you know what? It was always kind of my jam, live events. So whether it be music or wrestling or sports, like I made a point of, we grew up right downtown Toronto too, so it was like the ACC is 5 minutes from our house, the whatever it was, the Sky Dome, and a lot of the cool clubs in the city, whether they be at the time, I remember like Cool House or Opera House or, stuff like that. I love going to see the clubs, to see the smaller acts too. And I love live events in general, I think,
Man, yeah, it's tough right now. Really missing live events of all kinds. What sort of I didn't know you were such a big music guy, man. What sort of shows have you seen? Like, what are you into?
At the time, so this would have been when I was 14, 15, 16 and up. I started going pretty young. I was really into indie rock. So, my buddies and I were all, musicians and stuff like that. So we'd get together and jam out, and we, made a few attempts at a band. We won a battle of the bands in high school once. That was really rad. But mostly the indie rock and the bands like the Strokes come to mind at the time that we were really into back in the day. But in terms of going to concerts, I kind of tend to skew between alternative anything and hip hop. Those tend to be, unique artists that are new and edgy and exciting, and that's kind of tends to be more what I'm into. So it's a wide breadth there.
It's very cool. I could see it for sure. There's a huge overlap between live music, live wrestling, characters. That's so cool, man. That's something new that
the aura, the presentation, all that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, some of the most interesting musicians, like on the same par as wrestling, are characters, people who have those personalities that, like, even if you're not, the best technical wrestler, some guys can get by on personality. Same way, like maybe they're not the best band, but people love to see, very, very cool. That's awesome to learn about you.
Thank you. I'm glad to talk. Well, actually, while we're on to the obscurities, I prepared a little gift for you for the show here, because as I know, 905 Vintage, it's not to be messed around with. If you're looking for vintage clothes, you go to 905. Let me tell you, that's where it's at.
Thank you.
So part of what I was really into as a kid too, teen, was vintage clothing. So I got big into it and tried to buy up all this cool stuff. And of course, half of it went out, my parents' house years ago when I left, whatever it was. But one of the things I did hold on to, which I happen to love, is this cool all over Prince Silver Surfer t-shirt.
Oh my
And
goodness.
this is it's a Marvel shirt that I got about 15 years ago, and it was probably about 15 years old when I got it.
Whoa.
And I've heard some guesstimations on what this thing might be worth, but it's just still one of my favorite shirts to wear. So I've never think about parting with it. The Silver Surfer was the Silver Surfer was he was probably, him and Spawn were the comic books that I read when I was a kid. And so, when I found this shirt, I just died and went to heaven. It was the best thing for me.
Oh man, that is so cool. That's a really good one to say the least.
That's a sharp one. Yeah. I'll wear it to the shop one day soon.
Hell yeah, man. Oh, that's awesome, dude. So you're a big comic book fan too.
Also, not really, but I was a Silver Surfer fan. I got big into Silver Surfer. I kind of went all in, tried to get the biggest stack I could and learn about the character. And maybe that's the same kind of ball of wax with my music taste. I don't know, but Spawn and Silver Surfer, those were the guys.
It is cool to see you kind of certain things will stand out to you, and it's interesting.
Huge.
Very cool, man. Yeah, you very cool. Let's talk about kind of the start of your career. When did you transition from, you and your brother wrestling in the living room to taking classes to doing events? Because especially then too, like I think it might be a little bit easier now to kind of find out about schools and independent shows and that. But kind of
I think so.
The internet was like, you hear about some of these older guys finding stuff in the back of and Pro Wrestling Illustrated ads for schools and that. Like, how did you guys
right? Well, I think the one thing that I think kind of gets lost with the, when talking about my career is that it's, as much as I'm grateful for all the years in that I have, taking away the pandemic, I have 7 years in from day one of school. Like, my first day of wrestling training took place 7 years before the pandemic screeched everything to a halt. So in that 7 years is 5 years of running Greektown, is probably 600 plus matches, is a trip to Japan, a lot of good things that I've been fortunate to do. So in terms of how I found out, I mean, it was very much of the modern era, you know what I mean? But where it would be different was, I guess, in the sense that, it was definitely regarded as like a bit of a circus sideshow, like, what are you getting yourself into kind of thing. And there is, I'll say, like most things, you can really kind of find the dregs of society if you're, going to let yourself kind of fall to that, or you can, make it what you do. And it was I remember a couple-year process of kind of mulling it over, whatever you want to call it, fate, destiny. I remember there was a wrestling school at the end of our street in Toronto, believe it or not. And this was run by Ron Hutchison, who I would later find out, for those who don't know, Ron Hutchison trained Trish Stratus, among other Canadian, I think Christian and Edge too, of course, you know what I mean, like legends. And call this what you want. My brother and I grew up 20 houses down from Ron Hutchison and never knew him a day. Never saw him, never knew him. When I was 16, I called his school, still not knowing him, left a message, gave my bio, all my interests, things to, how you got in back in the day. Never called me back. And maybe that was for the best, because a couple of years later, I found Squared Circle Training online, which was, that was the school at the time in the city that really kind of generated any students of value. And kicked that email around for a couple of years, finally got an invitation and said, now's the time. So I was completing I was in the middle of third year university at U of T at the time. And I was working as a personal trainer, and I was going to wrestling school full time. So that was a very busy time in my life that I am happy to have made it, through with all that wisdom and knowledge.
Mm-hmm. But you knew this was the dream. Like it sounds like no matter what, even if you didn't end up in wrestling, you were going to be a performer of some kind, between the band. But so when you had to grind like this, man, you're in university, you're doing, like, what's the motivation you just knew you wanted to be a wrestler?
It's something that I was not aware of, but I've been told it now enough times to know that my engine burns like no other. You leave me by myself, I don't stop working. I don't just slack. You know what I mean? I push myself. I've never sought exterior motivation. Probably because I never received exterior motivation. I march to my drum because that's the way I am. It's because of what I have to do that if I want to succeed. So I kind of refresh me on your question there so I can better answer that one. Just though. I mean,
just about what was the motivation, while you're working so hard?
Because it's my life, and for lack of a better term, it's like, the lives that we lead, it's up to us to put something into them to get it out. You know what I mean? So, for whatever reason in my heart or my head, I couldn't necessarily do that, just that basic kind of existence. You know what I mean? There was parts of me that really felt underserviced, or, with a cap on them, that if I didn't have that opportunity to express myself, as you say, via performance or whatever it was. So, I always believe that what you do when no one is looking defines your character. And so, I took it as a challenge, basically, to do school well, to train my clients well, to, be fully focused at wrestling school. And I guess that's probably been part of my strength, which has allowed me to excel this far.
Hell yeah, man. That's awesome. I love it's motivating. I hope people are hearing this and like seeing how hard you work during these times and seeing all the benefits of it and everything coming together for you, dude. It's really cool, man. What happened with did you first start wrestling with your brother? You guys entered as a tag team, or did you work singles a little bit? This is the part that I kind of don't know.
Yeah. So the basic, the gist of the story is that we started together. I always thought of myself in my head, I was this, singles star, yada, yada, yada. Through training and looking for a way to get on the shows, basically, I had the idea to create the fraternity. The fraternity was originally another pal of mine who I was able to have some mojo with in training. And then pretty quickly became an idea. I think it was a trainer at the time. He said, put your brother, for lack of better wording, put your brother in that too. And they actually became the tag team while I was the singles star of the fraternity. But didn't take very long to figure out that my brother and I had a really natural chemistry in a lot of ways. And feeling like that was a lane that I could rise up the ranks in. And so, we went that way. We made the switch and we shrunk down to a 2-person team there. And it was a hell of a ride for about 4 or 5 years there.
So cool, man. I think the fraternity is just such a cool gimmick you guys came up with. Can you kind of just explain it for anybody who hasn't had a chance to see your work there?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I was at U of T at the time. So I was a big believer in kind of giving, especially with pro wrestling, it's such a visual medium at the beginning that I really do feel like you got to kind of give them, if I'm looking a certain way, it doesn't really behoove me to start doing something wildly different than, looking like a clean cut, fresh frat boy, which at the time I was playing college hockey. I was going to frat parties. I was, having a time. And I felt that if that's how I'm being perceived, well, then that's what I'm going to give to them. So I, figured out exactly how I wanted that to look, how I could still be myself within that role. And, as these things do, they kind of, you build, and they kind of grow into what they do,
Yeah. They always say the best wrestlers are, yourself with the volume turned up. And that's awesome. That's cool to hear. That's what you did.
Hell yeah.
So you guys became famous for your battle royals.
How do you mean? Explain.
You guys had the frat house.
Oh, the frat house brawls.
Yeah, the frat house brawls. Yeah, that became.
Yes. This is a great segue because for a lot of some of the fans that feel that it was a real kind of 180 from what I was doing to how I decided to start expressing myself with more of the hardcore tendencies. Part of why I made that switch and put that name on was because I felt that I was already doing that craziness, but it was because the gimmick was so strong that it was actually kind of being lost for the gimmick. And if you look back, as you say, those frat house brawls are violent. You know what I mean? There is blood. There is infinite weapons, and those frat house brawls were as early as I started wrestling. So, as far as I'm concerned, I've been hardcore, and I'm trying to get as much of my due as I can as I climb that ladder.
That's super interesting. So you again, with the segue, a big reason for changing into hardcore Channing Decker, the White Bronco, was because people were kind of overlooking, like they were thinking of you as kind of like a silly, like these fun matches while you were doing the same sort of things you're doing now. That's super interesting.
Heck yeah. And especially with the name hardcore. I think that's how literal you have to be often with a wrestling audience. You know what I mean? It's, and even, it's, what has it been? Probably 3 or 4 years since I made that switch. And, it's only within this last year that people have finally kind of stopped referring to me as, frat guy, you know what I mean? Or, people are late sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yep. No, absolutely. Sometimes it takes a while for people to catch on, right? And especially when they already know you something, but that's really cool. Really, it's interesting to hear how you adapt, right? Like you kind of see it, and to pick up something that early too, like that the fraternity character is really clever. And
you know what, as I said, it was beating the hell out of my body, trying to make it work for me. And I think, I heard, something that stuck with me was, kind of growing and aging and gaining wisdom isn't so much about necessarily becoming other things as it is about kind of shedding the parts of you that aren't you. And so for me, especially with this, iteration of myself, this is me not worrying, not paying mind to what does WWE need to see? What does the people around me expect me to do? What do I think is safe and going to get me a job? You know what I mean? I've taken the approach where, I do me meticulously. I try to grow and swell my reach and my ability and my, whatever it is. And I'm, that law of attraction, you know what I mean? Like, did I try to get into acting? No. Did I try to get into modeling? No. Did I, but saying yes, having a positive attitude, believing in yourself, you can achieve everybody can achieve wild things with those habits.
Absolutely. And you're such a hard worker, man. It is cool to see all those things come through. Speaking of being such a hard worker, man, you're like, being a wrestler is, already a hard enough job. On top of that, you're also a wrestling promoter. You run Greektown Wrestling. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, let me just say real quick too, man, I would kill for a Greektown show right now. I miss it so much, dude.
Oh yeah, dude. We were spoiled with the great one there in March before the pandemic really took full swing. But it was something, and this is funny too, because I've kind of come to realize that I think me as a promoter started with me as a teenager throwing house parties back in the day. And because I look back and I see all the Facebook invites are hilarious. They kind of became themselves like these, like, I don't know, these iconic summer jams. But it was, I had folks that trusted me enough that they would get the hell out of the house while I was like 16, 17 years old. And I would, invite 30 people over and jam out and be a host, and I feel that yearning to be a host and put something special on for the people around me, that's kind of the bricks that went towards Greektown Wrestling. So by the time I was a wrestler, I just, literally, cash in hand, hustling tickets, and so I kind of, looked around, and I was fortunate I grew up in that Greektown community too. So a lot of the local businesses were very, familiar with me and knew what I was doing and are excited. And it came together in a perfect storm where I got those businesses together and the tickets that I was already selling, and brought wrestling to the east side of Toronto, which hadn't really been happening in any sort of way in that area. So, that's 5+ years ago now. And wow, I mean, the breadth of knowledge in terms of negotiating, running your own business, being an entrepreneur, before you even get into the booking and all this kind of stuff, there's so many ways that I've been able to learn from that experience that it's been really great.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the most behind this, like, it's got to be something that people just don't understand behind the scenes, all the work.
Well, you might not even understand, so I will share with you, because it is just that, it's just that funny, so on, especially the first few shows, I was setting up the ring, I was setting up, not by myself, but setting up the ring, setting up the room to have sort of an ambiance. I was coordinating, I was agenting all the matches. I was, there was times when it could be like I was dealing with like bar tabs, like, I would have the bartenders in the back, like getting me to sort of cash for them. And then like my music hitting and, being focused and going out there and having a main event match, whether they be Sabu or Tommy Dreamer, Tajiri. So, I half wonder now, especially like, what are these guys, at first you see this young guy running around doing all this stuff. You wonder if he has time to have a great match too. And I think that my performance has spoke for itself, and I'm really proud that I took that blue collar approach to, maybe my mother would have walked in with a 50-50 raffle, being a mom and not knowing that it's not the good time, when my music's about to hit, and, dealing with that and then still going out and crushing it. You know what I mean? I was proud of that. I'm still proud of that.
Should be super proud. It's you really do run a great show. And I've personally seen, I've seen you deal with everything from tickets to like a homeless guy walking in and falling asleep on the floor.
Yeah.
It's not all glamour behind the scenes, and you do really run a great show. For anybody checking this out, Greektown Wrestling, they've got an awesome YouTube with a lot of great matches on there. Like, seriously, check it out. But let's talk a little bit about it. You've wrestled legends there, man. Sabu, Rhino, Tajiri.
Yeah. Tommy Dreamer, Mikey Whipwreck.
Crazy. A story that I actually read about you is you took a wrestling seminar with Rhino back in the day, and then you eventually wrestled him in your own promotion. Like, that's crazy, dude.
Well,
that's crazy.
Not only that, is it Rhino really kind of was. He took a real liking to my brother and I early when we were wrestling first in Detroit, Windsor area, and even in Toronto. He would still come then. And he took a liking to us. So I saw one day that he was running a seminar, as you said, in Pittsburgh area. And I was actually booked on another show, but it's safe to say that it was nothing to speak of. So I took the chance. I told him, hey, you know what? I have an opportunity I'm going to pursue. Canceled the booking. Went with the opportunity just to get in his face, to show him that I gave a shit and all this. And at that seminar, this is no joke. The seminar was the first day for myself, Brittany Baker, and Wardlow, all at the IWC in Pittsburgh. And, Rhino loved me in the seminar, put me over to the promoter. The promoter used me that night. And then we went on like a 3 or 4 year tear where we set like every tag team record that they ever had in a 20-year company. This is a company that has AJ Styles, CM Punk as their former champions, a true American indie company. And, we hold records that stand to this day, which I'm very proud of too.
Yeah, longest tag team title reign, right?
Hell yeah. Cumulatively, I think we had something like that, 2 years, something like that. It was great.
That's so cool. How does that feel for you? Like, starting out working with these guys, taking seminars, and now you're booking them, you're wrestling with them. It must be an insane full circle for you to really. Do you sit back sometimes and think about it, or are you just always moving forward?
Well, I think part of it now, for me, is the saying comes, you might get lost in the sauce. So what I feel about getting lost in the sauce is when you're just too caught up to even take stock of what the hell's going on. And that's all. It sounds kind of good, grind lifestyle, but it's not for me. Fuck that shit. I'm looking to do amazing, spectacular things and keep a calm heart, be positive, not get I don't want to move too quick if I don't have to, pacing and planning is everything. So, me, I talk in circles. I don't even remember the damn question, but I was happy to get that off my chest.
Very cool. No, that's so cool, man. Let's talk a little bit more about Greektown. Just some of the one of I think probably my favorite match I've ever seen there was you and Sabu.
It's all come down to this. June 23rd, 2019. Greektown Pro Wrestling 2300. It is the main event. Decker, Sabu.
That was an amazing event. It was a cool day to be a fan, man. Like, I got to meet him. He was a hero of mine, like, growing up.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's just one. This question's for me.
No, it's good, but it also kind of reminds me too of something I did, want to I touched on earlier was, I think about part of the stigma about being a promoter is booking yourself in the main events. You know what I mean? You're going to get the haters coming out of the woodwork to be like, oh, this guy's putting himself over. So that's, to be honest, about, I think about things as a collective consciousness, all the things that kind of make you who you are. And I think that's also part of the reason where the hardcore envelope got really starting to be pushed there, because as far as I looked at it was, even though, I don't listen to nonsense, I don't listen to garbage, what I do even understand for myself, I like to push myself. So if I'm going to give myself that top spot, I also want to earn it. You know what I mean? 150% of the way. So, I take a great deal of pride in always making sure that the fans really try to go home with, an awe-inspiring night, seeing something spectacular. And I think that's kind of become like the MO of Greektown, isn't it? You know, they're kind of can't miss things where if you're not there live, you're really not getting it as exciting as you can on YouTube. Yeah, as you said, we got lots of content, but you know, whether they be my house parties as a teenager or Greektown Wrestling today as an adult, I like to make sure that everyone there feels welcome, feels invited, feels part of the family, and definitely is contributing, you know, with their enthusiasm online or in person.
1,000%. I can honestly say, just from attending your shows and that, I've made friends, like just from other people watching, and you guys really do have a whole community atmosphere. Like I miss it so much, man. And as soon as you're back, that first show back is going to be incredible.
It's going to be a big one. You know, I do think I've come to notice, you know, on my time traveling around Canada, US, Japan, that a promotion tends to be a reflection of the person running it. And, you know, I've taken that to heart. So I like to, like, as I said, you know, for all those reasons and more, I like to make sure that Greektown is that inclusive environment.
That's awesome. Something you touched on was saying how you like to leave that lasting impression, send the fans home with something. And I can tell you from every show I've been to, that is 100% accurate. That's exactly what your matches do. A Channing Decker match stands out on a card, man. I can think of just some crazy bumps that you've taken. That Matthew Justice match I'm talking about specifically. That was one of the craziest things I've ever seen in any wrestling match, any wrestling promotion. That was a officially sanctioned Big Japan Wrestling death match. Was that the first one in Canada? It
was the first ever, straight from the office in Japan, the Blessing. That was the first one they ever did, and they were very thrilled to be able to extend their name to Canada for the first time.
That's so cool, man. Can you just break that down, like break that match down a little bit, and then we'll talk about Japan and everything. But like,
yeah, hell yeah. I mean, so the timing on that one basically comes on the heels of me returning from Japan for the first time, with, as you said earlier, a ton of momentum, a lot of gained experience, a lot of gained knowledge, a lot of new little tricks that I got to add to my tool belt, basically. And I was just working a ton at the time too, coming back. And that was an opportunity for me to wrestle Matthew Justice, who is you know, like an old school hardcore guy, you know what I mean? Like real thoroughbred, but with some creativity and a lot of power, which I love, real physicality. And, you know, that was one of those things where he's a chill dude too. You know, we probably didn't even get a chance to talk a ton, like, you know, in my memory, you know what I mean? I always get a kick seeing like how hairy my opponents get, you know, when they see me running around. It's okay, now it's halftime now, or, you know, intermission. Like, when are we going to talk about this, you know? And he's chill, and, you know, we vibed on everything. And that was one of those matches where, you know, wow, we really did have like about a dozen spots, I'd say, that kind of really came to life. But that was a match that I love to work because I got to be me. I got to not that I'd ever do, but it was a flow, a natural flow, a trust. He's a great worker too. You know, two guys that can think off of the map, can paint outside the lines in a meaningful way. And so for me, you know, the Finley roll outside of the ring, I mean, that's the other edge of the sword of getting lost in the sauce. When you're lost in the sauce, you do crazy shit like that. You know what I mean? And I think that bump stands up. Fuck. I mean, it's that's one of my favorite hardcore spots, period. So
takes off the rope. Two gun salute, lifts up Justice. What the hell is he going for? Oh, no.
exactly.
I hope to bring that to, you know, whether it be WWE or whether it be AEW or wherever, you know, whoever would like to stand up out of the line and put their name in the hat for hardcore Channing Decker. You know, I plan to bring this exact same heart and soul and creativity to television.
Yep. Well, I think, like I was saying, wherever you do end up, you will stand out because of. And you mentioned there was about 12 spots in that match, man. I think you are underselling it. There was about 12 per minute. Like I watched it again last night, and there's some stuff
going rapid fire.
There's some stuff I like because the ending spot was so crazy, right? Like that's what sticks in your head. When I watched last night, I was like, oh my god, I forgot all the stuff leading up to this. Like,
yeah, the funny thing, because of that Finley roll was so violent and creative that there was, you know, even now, I 2 or 3 for sure other things in that match that were super unique. Yeah. And innovative in that match alone. So yeah, I got to go back and watch it. I do. I would, you know, it's the kind of match where I wish the wrestling world saw that match. Yeah. You know what I mean? And maybe one day they will. But it's something for now that I'm proud of, you know.
Well, anybody who's checking this out, we'll be sure to link that in our
Please, yeah, thank you.
that is something that honestly, if you are a wrestling fan, if you are specifically a hardcore wrestling fan, you know, used to be a fan of ECW, this match stands up all time for hardcore wrestling, and I can't believe that.
Thank you.
I was right beside where you landed there, man. It was so crazy.
Even I look back on that, and like, yeah, it's as I say, it's one of those things where if you're not kind of running on like, for lack of a better term, like God mode, just like feeling invincible, it's probably one of those things you second guess. But
of course,
I've learned that it's not about denying fear. It's about acknowledging fear and confronting it, and that's bravery, or that's balls. And to me, if I ever felt a minute of fear there, that's all the more reason for me to go and jump, basically. So, I had a big thrill in that match. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's not something you can stutter step into. Like you gotta.
What I love actually about that is the athleticism. I take a lot of pride in being an athlete in that ring, no matter what I do. So this guy, whatever Justice weighs, you know what I mean? I love the big, heavy boy. End of the match, toss him on my back and sprint out of the ring. That's the way to do it. You know what I mean? I think any sports fan can relate to some physicality like that.
Of course. Here's an interesting question for you. Speaking about the Justice match and everything, do you find it to be do you put pressure on yourself do you find it stressful, let's say, to try to top your like, do you ever think, okay, well, now that I've done this, what do I do next? What do I do for the next Greektown? I got a moonsault off of a steel cage now. What do I?
Yes. So I think in the short answer is no. I don't worry about that. When it comes time to certainly about topping the old shows, those old shows used to go so well that admittedly I did feel to myself like, wow, this was a dream come true. How much more can a dream come true? Like, it's already been so wonderful. But I think what separates me as a performer is probably the approach I take, where I would actually be more afraid. I would be more afraid of not having the information in my head to grow. For me, I can't wrestle a person without learning from them. So, that match from Matthew Justice, I learned with it. I mean, I could probably go through that thing and pick 2 or 3 things out that I took from him, you might want to say, added them to my tool belt, or whether they be up here. And, the next match I have my tool belt's that much bigger. So, I guess I take it as a challenge to continue to grow and learn. But I think taking that approach is probably what gives me that infinite runway, as far as I'm concerned. I want to wrestle. There's really no reason why I would ever stop wrestling, as far as I'm concerned. When I'm Ricky Chozu to this day, whoever it is, I'm going to wrestle like a 60-year-old when I'm 60. I'm not going to be the 32-year-old guy who's doing, the shit that I'm doing. I'm going to be the 60-year-old version of it. And maybe it's not wrestling, maybe it'll be film, television, or something completely 180. I don't know, but I do know that, wow, I mean, imagine how smart we could be in 30 years if we actually gain some wisdom and knowledge along the way. It's a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. Very cool, man. I like how you're so open-minded with stuff, and just seeing.
On that note, I'll say, because I think a lot of what I noticed, the word comes up as missed opportunities. And I think for a lot of people, it's easier to kind of discredit things right away, so they don't have to engage with it or deal with it at all. And, yes, your annoying uncle might have 10 things that are annoying about him, but, if there's 2 things that are good and you overlook them because of the 10, well, that's only you missing out. So I try to look under the stones that are unturned, you know what I mean? Because I do think that there's a lot of jewels of wisdom there. And it's really helped me for sure in my game, to fill up those little holes.
Dropping knowledge on everyone, man. I love it.
Boom, 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 boom.
If you guys thought it was just going to be wrestling talk, we're going deep now.
We're getting philosophical.
I love it, man. No, that's such a great attitude. I do really believe that kind of your attitude and the way that you're always trying to improve and learn is what makes you really have shot up the wrestling ranks in a relatively short amount of time. And it's awesome to see, man. I'm sure it's just going to keep getting better and better.
Well, and to think, who knows in a few years then when we talk, we'll be talking incrementally, but then when we can reflect on this time, as you say, I mean, it's a bit infinite, isn't it? When you can kind of, hope to continue to grow. And, it really helps me deal with a lot of the leveling up as it comes. Because, it isn't, as, I'm sure running your own business, being a successful entrepreneur like you are, it's not always just a direct climb up. And I think a lot of the people who find those challenges and run the other way assume that, say, guys like us, we don't even acknowledge the issues. it's not that they're not there. It's that we perceive them to be less detrimental than they are, or find a way that we can get around them, or find a way to build and grow in spite of, or even learn from whatever obstacle you're worried about. So, I mean, as you say, dropping those wisdom bombs, they're free here on the Gabbin with Gavin podcast.
It is true though, man. It's like, if your job was easy, everybody would do it.
100%. And I think that's super important, to be honest, about my disposition about the world around me. I mean, look, it's not that it's a perfect place, but I'm not going to let that compromise my level of happiness, my level of, work on myself, my soul, my heart, whatever it is. Like, I'm going to continue to live a beautiful life. And you know what, as I'm talking about that, I've often kind of wondered, why is it some of the things that I do in the ring, where did that primal scream come from? And I've decided now that why that is so effectively me is that rebel yell, if you will. You know what I mean? It's the yelling in front of everybody's face that ever told me to compromise myself, that ever told me to hide parts of myself, that ever told me not to do this, that I couldn't do this. I make sure that I yell into every one of their fucking faces, and then I go and show myself what I'm capable of every day.
Hell yeah, man. No, I love that. That's so cool, man. Let's talk a little bit now about your big thing going on, talking about how life's been beautiful lately. You were recently, we're looking at the t-shirt here, you recently portrayed the loose cannon Brian Pillman on just an amazing series, Dark Side of the Ring. That like Dark Side is just incredible to begin. Like, to me, it's the perfect show. I think if you've never seen a minute of a wrestling match, you could tune in and like, what a bunch of incredible stories from it. Just
Heck yeah. Well, to me, that's a very good talking point, because it actually does make me think about, Greektown Wrestling. And part of it is, if you're at Greektown or if you're watching Dark Side, and they do this phenomenally, is that whether you're a lifelong fan or, as you say, tuning in for the first time, it's not exclusive. It's a way that they have a way of telling the story where it's not patronizing anyone. It's informative while also being substantial for real wrestling fans. And I think that that's honestly, again, part of how I also have, built myself as a wrestler and as a promotion, is that I want wrestling fans to be excited. And I want the family of 5 that saw a poster down the street in the residential community that I run my shows in to come and enjoy themselves and not feel alienated or anything of that matter, to be entertained too. Hitting on different levels. Levels is the name of the game. Hit on those different levels,
I can confirm that for you. Like, I've brought people to Greektown who have, they've never seen a wrestling match, or they used to watch in the 90s and have just left.
Sure.
Super. You guys do a great job of making every match is kind of different, right? You're not seeing 6 of the exact same matches. Like, a Channing Decker match is going to be a lot different than an RJ City match.
Sure is. And Jock Sampson, for that matter,
Absolutely.
Unless they clash, or the Sunny Kisses, the Bill Colliers. We've had a lot of great talents come through and are still with us.
Yeah, what a bunch of amazing talent you really have had come through your promotion.
It's quite the list. It's quite the list now. And, as I said earlier, the rising tide rises all ships. That was my, you talk about motivation for starting the promotion in a lot of ways, was to give, my brother and I and my crew that platform. When you're starting out in wrestling, it's not every promotion that's trying to give you a job. It's trying to give you any sort of money at all. It's so I said, screw that. You know what I mean? I took this on my back, and it's not necessarily something that you need a thank you for, but it's to me, it's kind of like, what did Jay-Z say? He said, if your team isn't winning, you're not winning. So you know what I mean? I tried to put that shit together, and the original crew would have been my brother, John Atlas, Jock Sampson, Sonny Kiss. Heck, I mean, LAX was on two out of the first 3 main events of Greektown Wrestling. 2 out of the 3 or 4. And so, a lot of them have come through and had great success themselves. And I really think that a lot of my fondest memories wrestling so far, and a lot of my colleagues too, is, those nights after the show, having drinks at Detroit Eatery, having food, staying out till 2, 3 in the morning and reminiscing, not even crazy debaucherous, just having a time, being real, relaxing. And that's the spoils to me. That's the rewarding feeling for sure.
It is cool when you think about it, because there's so few people that you can really have conversations like that with, right? That actually understand being in the ring. And it's amazing some of the people who've come through, and that's a real testament to you as a booker, like somebody who recognizes talent. And it's your show, it's a representation of you. You're not just going to throw anybody on, and you've clearly got a great eye for it.
Well, thank you very much. It is definitely, like I say, it was part of the motivation to begin with. And I think part of the cool stuff is now we say names like Sonny Kiss, LAX, Wardlow, those names. But Sonny Kiss had never wrestled a day in Canada. Sonny Kiss was 1 or 2 years into his wrestling career at this time. Like, it was, would a wrestling audience respond well to an LGBTQ performer with his ass out, shaking his ass? I said, I saw a star, no questions asked. I never doubted it. But I mean to say that, part of the beauty is not relying on already made stars to make your promotion, but to invest in the people that as they grow, you grow too. So that's what I was always looking for. And I'm very proud to have that vision, however you want to call it, not commended, but validated, as you see all, MJF, all these guys getting big contracts, not only contracts, but, DJZ, like this is countless guys, the Dark Order. So, I look to add my own name to that list in the near future.
Yeah, I think I think that that's something that we will be seeing in the future. And
fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Maybe the next time that we, if we have you on the podcast, we'll have a different title for you.
Yeah. That'll be when maybe I'll have different surroundings too. I'll have like a gold robe or something, Harley Race all of a sudden.
I love I think you should just get the gold robe either way.
Yeah. Whether it's a homage to race, just do. I love that the first thing I thought of when I came to luxury was a gold robe.
That's what people.
That was it. It wasn't women or like Lambo. It was gold robe.
A gold cape. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's what the rich people have.
It was all about.
Oh man, us. All right, let's just. I'd like to talk about Dark Side, man, because like we were saying,
yes.
Just incredible, amazing series. We're talking now just a couple days after the premiere, which you were a huge part of season 3. You previously worked with them on season 2 as well.
Yeah, that's right.
You played Chris Jericho and Eddie Guerrero.
Specifically Black Tiger.
Tiger. Sorry, because you work in the
Black Tiger. But as the real ones know, that was Eddie under the hood.
That's got to be. So you mentioned you hadn't had a lot of experience with acting, and it wasn't something you sought out. How did this opportunity come about for you?
So they initially contacted Greektown Wrestling, which is me, and they were asking for my assistance to provide suggestions for casting the show. And they gave me a list of names that they needed to fill, and amongst that list, I didn't even think it was in jest. I felt, this is a great fit. So I put my own name in for Jericho. It was. And at the time, I think they asked me to come in for like some sort of reading. So I remember, I even though there was no lines, and so I went into the Vice office, and Jason Eisner, who's the director, he was Jason Eisner, and I want to say, I think it was whoever was involved in casting at the time, Eddie Maginer, I think his name is, and any which way, they had me basically kind of mime out the Jericho movements and things like this, all the the strut stuff he used to do. And this was only after season 1, so it had some success, but it was still in the infancy in a lot of ways. So I think that's how they bothered to meet me in person and all that. But it started there, and I think there was somebody no-showed who was supposed to play Black Tiger, and they kind of looked at me if I could do it, and I said, I said yes, of course, you know what I mean. And I think that was the first 2 roles then. But even on the second season, it spiraled. I ended up playing a few other like miscellaneous characters, and then my favorite though of the second season is that I am in full hardcore Channing Decker mode. Spike blonde hair, Terry Funk shorts, yep. Prime Decker, in a match with New Jack.
That's right.
For the reenactments. But as far as in the kayfabe world, I mean, that's New Jack and Channing Decker going toe to toe. So, that was a real thrill for me at the time.
That's so cool. It's funny. I forgot about that one, but yeah, I remember seeing the shorts, and I was like, oh, he's playing himself. That's so cool.
That was a real thrill for sure. And I can even segue into the next season there. It was kind of a similar situation where, they obviously had, extended positive feedback from my contributions on the second season, and this time they kind of presented me. This one was a little different, I should say, because it was Pillman was the talk. You know what I mean? It was, they knew they wanted me as Pillman. I had been going into my own Pillman phase without them even knowing. I had already started to grow my hair, you know what I mean, for me, you know what I mean? And so when they saw me on the call, they like lost their shit. You know, they just couldn't even believe. They thought they had to put a wig and this and that. But even a lot of the clothes, actually, this is a lot of the clothes were my own in the Dark Side of the Ring episode. Yeah, they would, you know, it would happen that they would give me you know, I mean, they actually have a fantastic wardrobe, and the woman who's responsible for that, Sarah, she's just unbelievable, you know, how great she is. But it would happen that they would have like, you know, a little bit sort of shitty blue jeans they wanted me to wear. And I'm wearing a dope pair of like 501s that are ripped up. And, you know, I got my Doc Martens on anyways. And, you know, I had my hair, you know, kind of as I do. Yeah. So it was really more, honestly, I think it was like the t-shirt and the vest. Other than that, it was like pretty much mostly my stuff. Which like my coats, my leather coats that I wear you know, wore in Tokyo, I wore it all over at all my matches. That's the leather coat that's in the show. It is a lot of me, which is great. You know, I mean, it's a crazy crossroad how it happened at this point in my career.
That's crazy to hear, because something I even wrote down before this, like, to bring up, was how kind of authentic I found your portrayal of him, even down to the clothing. Like, I noticed you had the liquid blue shirts like he used to wear.
Yes, I love that you know the liquid blue, because the liquid blue, that's for true vintage fans. Yes, that's the real one. Only real ones know about liquid blue. Right,
but him and Mikey Whipwreck were the guys for the liquid blues.
That was my next. I was going to ask if you know who else did that. Dragon shirt is liquid blue too, which I love. That.
Yeah, that was the classic, man. It's funny. When I first started getting into vintage, I found one of those in a thrift store. This is years ago now. And I just knew it as the Mikey Whipwreck shirt. I didn't even know what it was or anything. I was like, oh, it's sweet.
Well, I actually, before I went to Japan, I was talking to Mikey and I said, you know, it'd be really great if I could, I was planning my outfits for the matches. And one of the ones I'd like to pay tribute to Mikey Whipwreck. And so he was, you know, flattered and honored and this and that. And he tried to get me the shirt in time for me to leave. But whether it be Mikey being Mikey or what, it didn't come to be for my first trip to Japan. So I think the next time you see me out there, or heck, I won't even wait, you're going to see me rocking that shirt for Mikey too, because he's been a real inspiration to me.
Well, that's so cool, man. That's another guy who's a legend who you've had on Greektown.
Brought him out of retirement. He said no to Joey Janela's spring break once or twice. And based off of the connection that him and I shared and having Tajiri around, I actually, after the first time he was here, and it was December of 2018, we were at the infamous Detroit Eatery, and I asked him, I said, you know, what would it take to get you to come out of retirement? And he jokingly looked over at Tajiri, who was standing outside with us, and he said, I want to wrestle with him again. And I said, on the spot, I said, done. And I think he thought I was drunk, but I wasn't. I was, but I wasn't talking shit. And so, you know, it was whatever it was, another 6 weeks or 8 weeks from then, he got himself into shape, and Tajiri came back all the way from Japan, and we crushed it.
That was I was at that show, man. That was an amazing night.
It was a special night, and to end it oddly enough with Sweet Caroline was a lot of fun too. I really enjoyed that.
Man, you are really making me miss live events right now. So
yeah, that was a good time. You know what I mean?
That's so cool. I just want to talk a little bit about your acting in that on the show. You did a great job to start with. Like, I really enjoyed it. Honestly, I think if I didn't know you and I saw you, I'd be like, oh, they cast Brian Jr. Like, you looked so much like him, man. It was wild. There's kind of the challenges and stuff that came with it, because you're not shooting a traditional movie, you know, where the camera's directly on you and you're speaking your lines. There's a lot of you were doing reenactments.
Yep.
There's a lot of you managed to do a lot. How am I trying to say? You managed to animate yourself and really, in the small sort of clips that they would put in, really tell the story.
Yes.
I think that's because of wrestling. Like, did that give you? I mean, I know a lot of it was wrestling based. There was in the hospital, like.
Yes. So the expanded answer on that is that I learned very quickly, very early on, that if I had 30 seconds in front of the camera, if I had 5 seconds, if I had 30 minutes, those are a gift. And that's an opportunity for me to make the most of that time and to find a way that I can be memorable in that little span of time. And so in terms of taking direction from the director and things like this, I mean, it helps when you have a world-class director like Jason Eisner, who's already done things like Hobo with a Shotgun and, been all over the world making films, and he's only reaching his prime now. You know what I mean? He's stunning. But a lot of the ways that I would think about spots, you know what I mean, in terms of breaking them down, compartmentalizing them. And then it sounds funny, but I take a lot of pride in taking direction well. So if somebody says something to me once, you'll never, ever, ever have to say it again. I remember it. And just the way my brain works, I don't even, if I can see something once, if I can hear it one time, I can replicate it. That's how I've been fortunate enough to be wired. So, it starts by not putting boundaries on what I feel I can and can't do. I believe that I can do it. And it's about finding the tools or the other things from other parts of my life that have allowed me to excel at that. And it helps to be cast, as you said, really, really well. I think they knew the physicality that, as you said, that I bring to the table. And when it comes to someone like Brian, I mean, that loose cannon energy, it's something that, to be honest, I've battled with recently because, I'll share this with you, but it's a dubious feeling to see a lot of yourself in someone like Brian Pillman. It's a dubious, we'll leave it at that, and you start to ask yourselves, why, for better or worse. I think that with Brian, there was a bit of that double-edged sword, wasn't there, where a lot of his energy really propelled him, but it was the other side of that energy that also seemed to cut him short, for lack of a better term. And, things happen for a reason, I tend to believe, even if I can't understand why. And my involvement on the show has been, I don't know if you want to call it life-saving, but 2 years ago, I was a different performer. I probably could have died in the ring, and I've been pretty happy about it, and it's not that I don't like to leave everything in the ring now, but I know that there's another part of my life too. And I don't just mean later, I mean right now. Like I love life. I love wrestling. I'm a wrestler in my blood. But it's really helped me gain balance, and it's helped me gain awareness, because as JR said in the most recent episode, he said, a wrestler's success is often as much about his life in front of the curtain as it is behind the curtain. And I think that's where a lot of my colleagues or peers or the men who have come before me have maybe fallen down. They haven't seen the whole spectrum, the good and the bad. And I think from acknowledging both, in front of and behind the curtain, that's a way to extend your in-ring career and as well breathe life into your personal life. Dude, I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I let myself, I so fixated on building my wrestling life that I kind of could give a shit about my personal life for a lot of years. And you know what? You got to make sacrifices to get to what you feel is a certain place. But I've kind of come to a point now where I can realize that I can continuously grow while keeping a healthy balance and while keeping, a calm heart, you know what I mean? A organized mind, you know what I mean? I don't like having racing thoughts. I figured out ways to deal with them. I figured out ways to use them to grow. And I think that's a long-winded way of saying that I'm happy to be establishing more of a balance now.
No, for sure. That's really cool to hear. I've enjoyed hearing a lot just about how you've reflected in this time and use it to grow. Like, it's a challenging time because I feel like it'd be super easy to regress during this time.
Sure.
And you're doing the exact opposite.
Yeah. Unfortunately in this life, we don't have any extra time. There's no makeup. You know what I mean? Like, it's like whether or not this year and a half has been that pandemic year, well, it's theoretically 1.5 years off the end of our life. I don't know. Like, it is what it is. So I got to make the most with what I can. A great expression from Stone Cold. He said, you get chicken shit and you make chicken salad. You know what I mean? And that's definitely something that I've really kind of, really thrived on, I think, mentally, is that idea.
Hell yeah, man. This has been so much fun, dude. I can't thank you enough for taking the time. Let's just do the couple fun questions to sign it off here, man. A few things that I'm super curious about. Who is your dream match? So let me ask you a two-parter here. You've wrestled dream matches already.
Yeah.
What's kind of your favorite match that you've had, like a dream match, and then who's somebody that you haven't wrestled yet? that's number one up on your list?
Oof. Oof. You know, there was a while there where you talk about, you know, are you afraid to not be able to top that for a while? Where, you know, it was a ride that was a little bit. It was crazy. You know, it was like every weekend you're having like, you know, the best moment of your life in some crazy way. You know what I mean? So things that come up to mind. I mean, as a promoter, as a brother, and as a wrestler, the match with Tajiri, Mikey, and my brother and I, that was one of, if I'm not mistaken, that was the last time we teamed in Greektown. It's probably one of the last times we teamed anyways. And for all those reasons, especially for how well the night went, you know, and the match was spectacular, that was a very special night for me personally. Wow, you cannot talk about it without Sabu. Going to Cork and Hall for the first time in Tokyo and wrestling the two best deathmatch fighters in the world, Yoko Miyamoto and Masashi Takeda. I mean, those things are a little surreal, you know, for sure. The ones that haven't happened yet that I really want to know, would love to see before the time's too late, is Homicide, is a guy I've always wanted to wrestle with. He's a huge inspiration to me. I think, you know, as a man and as a performer too, you know, I really connected with him over the years, and been happy to share a relationship, you know, a vibe as well. As you know, other names that maybe come to mind right now, guys like Brock Lesnar. I'd love to wrestle Brock Lesnar. Would be, that's, you talk about a dream match. You know, yeah, certainly stuff like that. Who the heck else? I was thinking about a few recently, but they come to mind. But those are two big ones right now for sure. Who would wrestle now? Oh, Moxley. I'd love to wrestle Moxley.
Oh, that would be
I feel like that one is a kind of the universe willing it to be in a lot of ways. I get a lot of messages from fans who would like to see that match. So yeah, I think those are some names that come to mind. You know what? And maybe over a beer another time, I'll have a few more for you too. Who knows?
I love it. That Moxley match. That's I didn't know I wanted that so badly until I just heard it right now.
Heck yeah, you know what I mean. I'd like to see it. This guy's a big. I loved when we watched him on wrestled Bill Collier on AEW. Did you see that?
Yes, yeah, that was so cool on Dark. Yeah. And
what blew my mind was that, damn, wasn't Moxley not that much smaller than Collier?
I was shocked to see that actually.
Yeah. So now it's a whole other element for me to get in there with somebody who presents that much technicality, physicality, and size. It's I'd love to take that challenge on.
So crazy. Oh man, very cool. That great answers. I would love to see some.
And Edge. Fuck it. I want to wrestle Edge.
Edge in Toronto would be
that. You know what? Okay, you know what? Let's put this out into the universe.
Okay.
If I have a fully functional dream happening,
yep,
it's taking place at WrestleMania in Toronto. Drake is singing my entrance. Trish Stratus is my valet, and I'm beating Edge for the world championship.
Amazing.
There it is. Maybe I drive a Zamboni with Trish riding shoddy too, you know, to the ring.
Zamboni, that's so good, man.
That's the move.
That's perfect. There you go. Book it, WWE.
Book it.
That's the dream match.
That's a big one.
That's so cool. What is would the match with Justice, would that be the craziest bump you've ever took? Can you think of anything? And also, have you ever had any bad injuries? Like, how do you manage to?
Honestly, preparation. I'm a beast in the gym. A beast. I crush yoga. You know, I put good food into my body. I stretch. You know, warm up before match. I take it seriously. You know what I mean? I definitely bring my sports background with me to basically make sure that I'm at the best I can to keep doing this, because it doesn't really matter how crazy I am or how much I can take. If I'm on the shelf, well, I'm not in the ring. So I definitely try to keep my preservation in mind. But wow, maybe that one takes the cake. I have other ones that are creative and wild too, but that one, there was no way around physical harm.
Yes.
You know, that one was all of it and the physical harm. So it was, the way I looked at it was basically the finish of the match anyways. So if we both, you know, went ass over tea kettle and couldn't get up, well, you guys got a full show anyhow. You know,
that's good. That's got to be the wildest answer I could have imagined.
I think so. Well, hey, did you see when I did that backflip off the moon? Sorry, the backflip off the balcony, the second floor balcony.
Yes.
Yeah, that one's up there too in terms of the insanity. Because I you know, the other day I saw this great photo of Super Crazy doing his moonsault off the balcony at the Hammerstein Ballroom, and I pledge to you in this interview here that he was not anywhere near as high as I was. I had another 5 or 6 feet on this guy when I was going up. You know what I mean?
I was watching some matches on your channel, just getting ready for this, and you've jumped off some crazy things, Dan. It's
You know, you got to trust the guys that are below you, I guess.
Yep, of course. It's very cool. Let me ask you, what's next? What do you got coming up on the radar?
Well, I mean, despite all of the wild notes and exciting plans I have for promotion and all this and that, I mean, there is an element of getting used to being in neutral in a way, stuck in neutral, as you want to say right now, you know, this part of my life. So that's why I have taken the opportunity to work on myself. That's why I have focused on my habits, you know, whether they be yoga, journaling, good food, exercise still, you know what I mean? Taking control of what I can. And I mean, you know what, you said it. It's like, you know, you really hope that that obvious next step comes in terms of a contract, things like that. But to be honest, I'm also open to the world around me. You know what I mean? I've had such a thrill working with Jason Eisner on Dark Side of the Ring, and you know, love his work. That, you know what, I hope and you know, the universe will know that if there's a role in which, you know, I can come in a la Terry Funk in Roadhouse or something like that, that, you know what I mean? I think that I'm excited about that. You know what I mean? I look for the task of taking on the lines, and without revealing too much, I will have that challenge soon. So that a little more, I guess I could say that, you know, this summer will be a little more acting for me, a little more movies, things like that. And, you know, in their own time, I'll be able to share more about that. But for me, it's about refining my process, staying positive, staying ready for an opportunity, and then actively cultivating an opportunity. So whether they be in the form of, you know, the arts that we talked about or what, I'm open and I'm ready.
I love it, man. Super pro wrestling answer of you. You got to leave them wanting a little more.
That's it. You said it.
I mean, this has been a ton of fun for me. Everybody check out Channing Decker, check out Greektown. He's hardcore, man. There's not much else to say.
He's hardcore. Yeah. I mean, I guess I can take this opportunity to thank you for having me on the podcast. And also thank you for being a patron yourself. You know what I mean? You put your money behind your mouth, you show up, you cheer loudly, you support independent wrestling, you support indie arts. And as an entrepreneur and as a man trying to make it in this world, I really have respect for the hustle that I see you putting forth and taking initiative to, you know, open up your shop. I'll tell you this. Hey, you know what? If you're growing up in downtown Toronto, 905 was not initially considered the coolest place to be. Yep. But what I love that you do is that you have cultivated your own niche, your own community, and you see it now with all the success and the personalities that are coming through your doors. So I'm happy to be here for the same reason, to share that energy. And I want to thank you, bro.
That means a lot. I really appreciate it. And it's like you've been saying this whole interview. It's about, you know, you got to take those challenges and overcome them.
Hell yeah, man. Bigger and better. And, you know, before you know it, you're building something you never even dreamed of.
Hey, same thing right back to you. And I'm very excited to see what the next steps for you are. And when this is all done, man, we'll get a beer at Greektown.
That's right. Or we'll be back for Gavin with Gavin, episode number 1000.
I love it. Hopefully we'll have it on sooner than that.
Will be a while, yeah.
Channing, thanks a lot, man. This has been so much fun, dude.
It's my pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers. Thank you.